Wow. Good evening. You all are so quiet. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, thank you. I can't express enough gratitude, really, for Janine inviting me here to introduce Lama Rod and to be here with you all again. I see familiar faces as I look through the crowd, which is very exciting, and I have a sense of a connection here at Naropa that makes me feel home. So I'm most appreciative to be here. And I'm most appreciative to be able to be here to introduce Lama Rod in the midst of actually moving and many other things going on. Originally, I was going to be a part of coming to the Resilient Leadership Program, and the opportunity to introduce Lama Rod brought me out of my stuff and things, and all because I feel it's so critical and important to continue to stand at his back. He and I met at a Generation X conference. Now, there's a conference for Generation X Dharma teachers that happens every 2 years. And I didn't know that he existed. But there we were, rare birds in the crowd, and noticeable birds in the crowd, if you could imagine. And when I met him, I had that kind of feeling that one has when they are both elated and also a sense of burden. Burden in that way that you know, oh, I have something to do. And that having grown up myself as a practitioner, as a Dharma practitioner for, by that time, over 2 decades, I had never had any contact with a black teacher. I knew of one. There was the first Zen priest, Kodo Boyd, and people would always say, "Do you know Kodo?" Because we all know each other. But I had never met her in person. And so I knew what it was like to grow up as a Dharma practitioner, to find my way inside of a teaching that I knew was my teaching, that I knew fervently was my practice. And yet I had to navigate it inside of the structures and systems that made even my very beloved community a challenge to navigate and to work with in terms of the persistence of racism, of white supremacy, of patriarchy, and as a Zen practitioner, like double up on that patriarchy right there. And so when I met Lama Rod, my sense was like, oh, I'm so glad he's out there, and oh, he's out there. And it felt my responsibility to the degree that he would allow me to be able to be present in his life and to support him. We talked about it yesterday, that he also had never seen a black teacher until he saw himself in the mirror. And I didn't want the unfolding of his path and the uniqueness, the preciousness of who he was to continue in that way. And so I took this responsibility that felt handed to me with a sense of both real, true happiness and also a deep sense of stirring responsibility that this is what we are called to do. That we are called to make space. We are called to open up the path as wide as we can. We are called to create opportunities to look over our shoulders for the people that are coming behind us. There's ways in which we're peers, but there's also a way in which I felt for the first time in my life a sense of my elderhood, that I had been in a place that he had not yet come, and that is our role. that each of us are, as Lama Rod said today, elders in training, and that we have a responsibility to hold ourselves differently, and it changes who we are. It changes the nature of our, if we allow it to, the nature of our capitalist system that puts us in competition with one another and invites us instead into figuring out how it is that we love each other into greater and greater upliftment, into greater and greater support, that we renegotiate what everything has told us about what it means to be the only ones, that maybe what we should be doing is eyeing each other, staring each other down, figuring out how we get ahead of one another. And it was clear to me that my place was to be at his back. And so I offer that to each of you, to think about the people that are in your lives that you stand in front of, and to figure out how it is that you turn around and get at their back. Who is it that we, each of us, must make room for, must cut a path for, must open the space for, to share the bounty of whatever it is that you have, to offer them into co-authorship, to offer them into co-holding the space with, to step aside if you need to step aside, but to find yourselves at their back. Who is it in your life? And more significantly, who is it in our collective society that we must do that for? Who is it that has not yet had the opportunities, the access, the resources, that each of us in the place that we are currently standing have an opportunity? And it doesn't matter what you have or what you think you don't have. Each of us have something to give someone else in our lives. We have a teaching to offer. We have space to create. We have an opportunity to love them into being more and more of who they are. And as we do that, we allow ourselves the opportunity to love ourselves into a bigger and bigger space, that we get to inhabit a bigger space for those people because of them. So I feel that in my being here today, I am permitted a greater space to love because I'm here with Lama Rod, that I am permitted a greater space in my heart, that I have continued to learn, continued to grow, continued to push myself as a Dharma teacher, as a Black woman, as a queer woman of color, as a misogynist hip-hop listening to, throwing down the beers while we worked on Radical Dharma. Yeah, we did. Person that continues to unfold and be unveiled, and to allow myself to not only to see him, but to allow myself to be seen. And in that way, we hold ourselves responsible. We hold ourselves accountable for the space that each of us, in our presence, in our very birth, in our very being here in front of you, disrupt something of what each of us at some other time in our lives thought was possible. That we recognize, he and I together, and our other Dharma teachers of color, colleagues, we recognize that we hold something greater than each of us. We recognize that we signal something greater than any of us could imagine, and that any of us could fulfill by ourselves. And so we come together in this way, and we get behind each other's backs, and we whisper, and we urge, and we nudge, and we push, and we love each other into being. And I thank you all for loving this man into being here, for welcoming him, not just an invitation, but a welcome, as I have spoken about here before. And I hope you will continue to do that as he is here, but I also hope that you will do what it is we are called to do as Dharma teachers, which is to invite you to do that in your own lives, to look into your own lives and to see where it is you may have been holding back, where it is that our society of individualism, of competition, has made you think that somehow you are against someone, that you need to be their adversary. And ask yourself, where is it you can find the love? How is it you can step aside? How can you turn around and find yourselves the wind, the support, the love at someone else's back? Thank you so much.
All right. Oh, it works. It's like magic. Thank you all for being here. I'm sure you have something better to do tonight. I do. Anyhow, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant to say. I meant what? No other, where would I be anywhere in the world besides sharing Dharma on a Thursday night? So before I begin, I need to know where my amen corner is. Okay, right here. Y'all spread out today. Okay, y'all holler back at me, okay? I want to thank everyone for making this visit possible. I want to thank Naropa University, Janine, for reaching out and offering me this honor. I don't feel, I think it's premature. I'm not, Sharon Salzberg or, Jan Willis or Joanna Macy or Surya Das. But I feel as if this is like something I'm being asked to grow into. It's like I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm just going to try to be here. And I want to thank university. I want to thank the president as well, and the Lenz Foundation, and the whole community for making this possible. I want to thank Reverend Angel too, like Black love, yes. Yes. It's going to get real black now, yes. You're not used to that here, but like, we're going to, don't get uncomfortable, it's just like, yeah, it's so much. I wouldn't be here without Reverend Angel. I wouldn't be here without you, So I knew what you were doing when you were taking me under your wing, and you could have done anything that you want. You could have just ignored me, as some of us often do, because we claim our territory. And Dharma teachers, we don't have a lot going on. There's like Buddhist famous, then there's like famous, right? But when people get Buddhist famous, they're like, oh, I've arrived. You're like, really? I feel like Reverend Angel is more than just Buddhist famous. You're just like famous. You're like a superstar, So it's very special. It's profound that you took the time and you continue to take the time, and we love each other, and our love turned into Radical Dharma. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who came out tonight. How's the sound? Just a little feedback. Yeah, like a gong that's my natural voice. That's the voice of enlightened beings. Proclaiming Dharma. All the texts say so. The texts are always right. So can you hear me now? No, you need to We're going to use, okay. I feel like I hear myself. I mean, on the mic. Okay. How's this? Okay. Always be a diva. When the mic is offered, take the mic, and then get violent if it's taken away. The mic is your lifeline. So great, so we got that under control. So it's such an honor to be here at Naropa University, so I've heard so much about it, and I wanted to come and, kind of check it out for myself. And I do have a tendency when I'm in Shambhala-like spaces to make jokes about Shambhala. I'll try to avoid it. Like, I don't like to be a guest in someone's house and be like, oh, this carpet. I don't practice appropriate speech, so just so you know, that's like, don't even try to pull that out on me. But to be in a place, this really profound place where Trungpa Rinpoche lived and taught. And he was definitely a teacher for me who showed me an example of what it meant to talk about Dharma in a real way, in a direct way, as he would say, in this very sane way. And for me, I translate sane as just being 100% real, And maybe he wasn't directly talking to me, but that's fine, because I understood, And I think that what I try to do is talk through my experience. And you may not get it, too, but my goal actually isn't for everyone to get me, to understand. That's actually a waste of time and energy for me. My work in the world is for me to understand myself. Right? All right, amen, I don't put other people's needs over mine in terms of interpreting Dharma. I first and foremost have to understand what Dharma is. I have to understand what liberation is for myself if I'm interested in freeing you. If I don't understand what liberation is, and if I engage in the project of liberation for you, then I'm actually becoming an agent of violence. I'm trying to colonize you with something that has actually nothing to do with you, but has everything to do with me. So breathe it. Breathe it out. I'm just beginning. You can get up and walk it out as well. So this is how I show up in the world, and people are like, oh, you don't look like a Lama. I'm just like, and I always think, oh, well, you don't either. And you can laugh, too. It's intentionally supposed to be humorous. Like, I'm good at this, right? So, like I'm really good at humor. So let's just put that out there. I try not to be arrogant. And I think also, I think one of the things, too, that I'm really interested in is, how do we practice a kind of honesty with ourselves, a radical honesty, too? And this is where I want to go in tonight, and this may not be comfortable, as I kind of disclosed yesterday at our town hall meeting, I'm kind of going through a transition, right now. And maybe it's not like so glamorous, but I think it's just worth mentioning too, I think people show up to the Dharma teacher, you know, and they show up to the Dharma talk, and they're like, oh, the teacher should be perfect. The teacher should have everything together. And when I see a teacher like that, I don't actually trust them so much. I feel like they're lying to me, you know, because I know Dharma teachers in their personal lives. I'm like, oh, wow. If your students knew what all of us knew, you know, you wouldn't be Buddhist famous anymore. Personally, I don't actually care about being Buddhist famous. Like, this is just like something just kind of happened. You know, like, I really care little about this. You know, I care about the income that comes in, definitely. You know, I'm like, oh, I can make money doing this by just showing up, singing wherever I want. You know, and you love it. You know, you love it, you give money, and we're all happy. So I guess part of the transition that I'm experiencing actually is about kind of transitioning into a new way of being. That sometimes we don't allow ourselves to undergo that transition, that transformation, because it means letting go of people, of the people we used to be, of the person that we're most comfortable with. And it means upsetting and disrupting people, you know. And then there are consequences for that, of changing, of telling the truth. You know, and then you have to decide, what am I willing to give up? What am I willing to offer? So so my teacher just died last week, and it's all very complex, you know. And when he, you know, I said my goodbyes to my teacher this summer. And so I was really in a good place, and he passed away. And I was like, oh, like, I'm just gonna be happy about this because I've been able to meet an authentic teacher. I've been transformed by this authentic master. And so it's nothing to grieve about, you know. And I felt him very strongly with me too. So I was like, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, I'm not gonna do this whole thing of breaking down, you know, because it's not, I'm too realized for that. That's good enough for you all. But I'm interested in something less uncomfortable, right? You know? So I was trying to bypass all of that. And get into just the, like, yeah, I accept this and it's cool, and like I'll see him again in the next life, you know. Or in the Tibetan system, he'll be reborn in next week and enthroned. And so I was happy, you know. And then I started sitting with another one of my teachers, actually another tradition, you know, who was like, you know what, you're gonna regret this. You're going to regret not grieving. It's going to come back and get you. You know, I was like, shit. And not only that, she was like, and you're not that realized either, so. So you should just kind of like skip over that narrative. You know, and I was like, okay, you know, fine. You know, fine, I'm gonna grieve it. And so, of course, my next question to her was like, well, so how do I do that? You know, and she was like, that's an excellent question, and good luck. So that began, this was just this past weekend, so okay. You know, and so I just really sat with it. You know, we're always told to sit with things. You know, I love telling people to sit with it because it's like, just go away and sit with it. You know, you'll figure it out. You know, less work for me. Basically, I was told to do that. You know, and then just within 24 hours, you know, I tapped into that grief again. You know, and what I started tapping into around the grief was this incredible anger, you know, this incredible energy of just being so deeply upset, you know, and thinking, how fucking dare my teacher leave me with this broken heart, with this absence, with a controversy. You know, because while my teacher changed my life, he traumatized others. He victimized others. He hurt others. You know? And this is a space that many of us are holding. You know? This is the complexity and the risk of entering into this dynamic. You know? I didn't feel bad about being angry. I still am. You know? But entering into that anger and naming it was so liberatory for me. You know? And it's strange that the people we love the most are the ones who have this potentiality to cut us the deepest. You know? And I was pissed off about that. You know? Devotion isn't easy for me. I distrust authority. So when I came into the Tibetan tradition, I was told, well, the teacher is the Buddha, the teacher is the guru. I was like, bullshit. I'm black, I've heard this one before. You know? And so natural barrier, this natural resistance, like, no, I can't do that, because if I lose my agency, I lose my safety. You know, and I'm not safe in this land. You know, and for a lot of people of color, and particularly black folks, we are still not safe. And so we construct these narratives of safety, which are just illusionary. And when that safety is pulled from us, then we fall back into our traumas, our paranoia. That's what they were telling me to do, is to let go of that safety. And I was like, I can't do this. You know, not to a man. I'll bet a man of color, but not to another man. You know, so I began the arduous journey of submitting into devotion. You know, and opening up the heart. You know, because the practice of devotion is not just submitting to someone, it's allowing ourselves to be seen and to realize that we too are the teacher, that our mind is an expression of the guru's mind, that there is no difference. And so devotion became simply an act of learning how to trust myself, which I was terrified of. You know? And so going through this process of grieving, what I've been able to understand, particularly as anger has arisen, is that it's okay. You know, that there's something that's really okay about this, that this is a part of the teaching. You know, that there's a complexity and a nuance to this. And it's not just black and white. You know, I've been saying this, you know, for the 2 days I've been here. When we oversimplify everything, then we increase the potential for violence. You know, not a lot is that simple. Not everything is black and white, but we get real lazy. You know, we get real lazy and try to boil it down into this or that. And then there's this whole range of things happening in the middle. But to enter into relationship with those things means that we actually have to change. We have to enter into the process of disruption. And it's uncomfortable. It's grueling. You know, it's sad. It's hopeless. It's miserable. You know. But that's where the transformation emerges from. You know. And the train is signaling that transformation. If we bypass that precious opportunity to enter into that transformative space, that space of tension, anxiety, terror, then we're missing something. We're missing how the guru, the teacher, is actually teaching us. You know. My guru doesn't come to me in times of happiness and joy. He comes to me in times of complete, utter disruption and loneliness. He begins to teach through the pain, through the discomfort, As Audre Lorde says, there's so much information in what we experience, particularly in our anger. There's so much data. If we don't show up to take that data, to understand that data, then we miss something really important. We miss the teaching. And then we keep stumbling back into our old ways of being that actually never serves anyone. That keeps perpetually traumatizing us over and over again because we can't get the teachings, because we can't show up, because we can't understand that it is within our discomfort that we're being taught how to be different, how to be more ourselves, or as we say in this community, how to come into contact with our basic goodness. So I'm learning how to lead more with my heart. And this is a tool particularly I offer to all of us who identify as marginalized and oppressed, unseen, pushed over to the corner and told to appreciate that you were allowed to get into the room to begin with. I'm sure no one has had that experience ever. But how are we asked as a form of liberation to start leading with our hearts? How do we start admitting and articulating the pain, the distance, the hopelessness? How do you start articulating this utter way in which we're erased? How do we begin to articulate the ways in which acts of microaggression over and over again begin to traumatize us over and over? How do we continue to lead with our heart when our friends do not believe how difficult it is simply to be somewhere? That we swim within energies and spaces and environments of trauma and violence. That for some of us, it's as thick as reaching out and touching it, and feeling it, this thickness. And we're told to be happy, and we're told that it's just a figment of our imagination. How do you lead with your heart when it's not safe? And for some of you, you may not understand this at all, and that's fine. That's totally fine because I'm not necessarily talking to you right now. And I don't want you to be offended because I didn't mean it in offense. I meant that everything isn't for you to hear. Who saw Black Panther? Yeah. That scene where the Black Panther is trying to be revived by the queen and the princess, and then the white guy is there, and then the king of that tribe is like, oh, you need to turn away. I'm not saying you should do that. There's a way in which we begin to turn into witnessing and being with other people's pain that we don't actually understand, in a way that we don't intervene and disrupt the embodiment of that. And that's what that scene was just communicating. There's going to be all kinds of college classes on that movie. So how do we begin to tune in to the pain, to the rage of those around us? And we may not get it, but we're not trying to disrupt that. We're not trying to center ourselves within that and make that all about us, because that's the problem. So I'm pissed off about that as well. I'm angry about that. I'm not interested if you're angry either about this. I'm not talking about the violence. I'm just actually talking about me. I'm not interested if you're upset about what I'm talking about. That's what love is for myself. And we've been talking about love in some of our groups. This is love when I'm able to articulate what I experience. And it's not about you, it's about me being free in this seat, in this moment, in this room. That's what Reverend Angel does every time she gets up. And that's what she taught me, how to be free by simply naming where I'm at and not trying to do your caretaking, right? Some of us are real tired, trying to be with our trauma and then trying to make sure everyone else is comfortable with our trauma. So you should let that go. So this is the conversation of anger and love together. Actually, it's the love for self and the love of wanting others to be happy, that actually holds the space for the anger to be there. And the anger isn't this compulsory thing that I'm reacting to in order for you to hurt as much as I do. The anger is telling me something important about me and about how I am out of balance. But beneath that, the love is helping me to move beneath the anger to sit with my basic woundedness, the basic heartbreak. And that's real complex. That's so nuanced. But this is one of the many things my teacher keeps teaching me, even in his death, is that his shit is complex. So to lead with our hearts, this is part of it. I began to articulate where I hurt. I began to practice a profound radical awareness of all the places I run away from because people have told me that I don't deserve to go there. That somehow, and this is actually quite very much the truth, that somehow my pain is a mirror for you and the acts of violence that you continually participate in. This is why we're not taught as marginalized people to articulate that, because it implicates those who are a part of the conditions and the causes that have created the suffering for us. So I say this not to blame anyone. I'm not passing the blame on. I'm telling you this is where I am. This is how I lead with my heart. I tell you that this is how my heart is right now. And I want to give you permission for you to tell the story and the narrative of your heart and your brokenness. And to not to caretake anyone except for yourself. I'm going to offer you that permission. I don't think you need my permission, but I want you to be reminded when you leave this place that Lama Rod said that you should articulate your broken heart and don't give a shit about other people. There's a lot of anger in that statement. There's some trauma, there's some reactivity to trauma there. How do you set your boundaries though? Sometimes you have to set that boundary and go right up to it and reinforce it. And be like, no. I said no. I said, and as in the words of Nene Leakes, I said what I said. And sometimes we have to be like, I said what I said no. No, I can't hold you. No, I can't hug you. No, I can't hold your hand. No, I can't walk with you. No, I can't go home with you. No, it's not okay for you to say that. No, it's not okay for you to approach me like that. And when I tell you to go, you need to go. Yeah? Amen. What I'm also pissed off about, since I'm pissed off at men. I say that on purpose because I love for women to be empowered. No, that's a joke. I want everyone to be empowered because all lives matter. I'm tired of fucking men. I'm just tired of of course, I'm tired, and I'm a man. But I'm tired of having to be in a tradition where we don't get and understand violence against bodies. I have to study with people who don't get that, and that I have to do this work, not to be taught, because I just want to be a student, but I end up doing the work of having to educate my teachers. That is actually not okay to do that. You can't say that. You can't put your hands on people, and it makes me sad. It's the sadness under that as well, where I'm disappointed that you haven't realized that realization stops somewhere, and it stops at my body. And you're right to say whatever you want to. I'm tired of the racism. I'm tired of the ableism. I'm tired of being expected to be grateful for what I get. And I'm tired of being attacked when I take what I need. I was thinking, Reverend Angel and I were talking about this, yesterday and today a little bit about what it meant to be teachers, to be Black teachers. And this is also the dialogue we were having in Radical Dharma. And for me, coming up in my lineage in the Kagyu school, with my teachers, I started with Lama Surya Das. And I was grateful for what I got, because no one else was giving it to me. I'm not grateful, and nor do I have to be grateful for the legacy some people leave. So sometimes it's really hard for us to say that in public. I'm just tired. Even with my root teacher, I'm not grateful for the legacy of hurt and violence, but I am grateful for how he changed my life. And I hold both of those together. But, going back to this idea of growing up in this lineage, coming into the lineage, I didn't see any example of who I was, And then something just kind of told me that if I wanted to see people like me, I had to become the person I wanted to see. Some of us don't understand what that's like, to become an example of something you have no role model for, to go through a system that's misogynistic and patriarchal and racist and ableist and ageist. Again, it's all complex. To go through that system and to be told that you will only be valued if you turn into something. If you just pop right into the mold, And the kinds of violence that I've had to sit through when I've said no. That I will actually become the teacher that I need to be, the teacher I needed to see. That I will become a teacher who will not accept and tolerate violence. Some of you are getting pissed off, fine. So you're not a part of my Dharma if you're not interested in calling this out. That's the boundary, and I said what I said. And it's so much, there's so much violence from men in our Dharma community when you start crossing that line. What you're called and how you're called and how you're told you're going to hell. That's not the Buddhism that I understand. So you can go and do that. But over here, we're going to practice actual liberation. So if you're not interested in that, then I'm not your teacher. I'm just going to piss you off over and over again. And you're going to be like, oh, that Black teacher, and some of you do think that. You know, you see a black teacher and you're like, oh, they can't be as skilled as a white teacher or an Asian teacher. Let's just put that out there. You know, and that's why some of us have to be above and beyond. Some of us have to sit 3-year retreat. Some of us have to go to Harvard. Some of us have to constantly produce writing. Some of us have to do books and radio and TV for us to get half the respect that a weekend Dharma teacher that's trained over the weekend gets, you know? And it's just the truth, you know? And you know what's sad about that? Sometimes even I doubt the legitimacy of other black teachers. You know? That pisses me off as well. You know, when I can't even celebrate someone who reflects me because I've been so conditioned with this oppression that I even doubt people who look like me because that's how it functions. That's how we stay bound. And the things that Reverend Angel has taught me is actually how to practice this radical black love, you know, and to learn each other's names and to speak to one another. In the same way I learned growing up in the South, like you couldn't walk past someone without speaking, you know. To bring that kind of radical love back into my interactions, you know, and to say, you know what, like we are all struggling with deeply internalized oppression and deeply racialized, you know, trauma, and that this is a process and that it takes a team, a community to work through. You know? It makes me sad that I have to do that. You know? It makes me sad that some of you actually don't give a shit. You know, that you're not interested in listening to me, you're not interested in being uncomfortable. You know? But I can't do any work for that right now. You know? But this is where I've come from. This is where I've had to be. You actually have never had to walk a day in this body. At least not in this life. But I pray you will in your next life. I'm actively praying for some of you to have a different experience. And you have, you just forget. You know? And this is what I've learned, and this is how I have grounded myself in this radical love that says, you know, I deserve to be here. I've earned the seat. You know, because I was born, I deserve to breathe, to receive love, to extend love, to get what I need to be happy. You know. And some of you may think, oh, you know, you're just here, you know, maybe because you're black. You know, no, I'm here because I'm good at this. And then the pushback I'll get is like, oh, that's not Dharma, like you're promoting the sense of self, you know. But when I was raised in the violence, you know, where I was told that I wasn't worthy, this is my strategy. I lift myself up because so many of you refuse to lift me up. You know, and that's what my mama taught me. You know, she was like, don't wait for people to celebrate you, celebrate yourself. Throw your own parties, you know, give yourself awards. You know, that's been my strategy because, again, you haven't walked in this body in this life. You haven't been raised in a context where you have struggled to see positive representations. You know, you haven't been in a life where people just assume that you would be in prison at this age, you know. To move beyond all of these obstacles, you know. And I say this again, not because I'm angry, it's because I'm practicing love for myself. And I want you to get that anger and love exist together, you know. That if you're centering yourself in this, then you're not getting it, you're not hearing the teacher, your guru isn't arising for you in your own experience. You know? That we own our anger, but we don't have to respond to the anger. We don't have to operate from that anger. You know, we can operate from the love, and the anger continues to inform what's going on, but it also continues to direct us back to our woundedness. And let the woundedness connect you. You know, let the broken heart remind you that you're not the only one in the world. You know, that you don't have to be in this body to have a broken heart. We all are experiencing broken hearts. None of this is working out the way we want it. You know? You know? This is samsara. For those of you who are new to samsara is just like shit. and then you get born and thrown into the shit. And then our work is just to climb out of it. You know, I'm not trying to clean the shit up. I'm trying to get out of it. You know, like let someone else clean it up. You know, and then we reach in and pull others out. You know. So thank you for your attention. You know, I want us to have some dialogue. And I want, you know, as we begin to ask questions and have a dialogue, I want to privilege the voices of queer and people of color, you know, because that's what I do, you know, because we don't listen to these voices enough. You know, again, the microphone. So let's talk. Who's first? I'll start pointing people out too, because I see what's on your face. Yes, come on. Yeah, I guess we'll come to the mic. It's hard coming to the mic. Who doesn't want to come to the mic? I'm holding the mic, so like I don't have to go anywhere. It takes so much courage to do this.
Thank you for bringing these awarenesses to our awareness. It was started by saying disrupting the dominant narratives, dispelling the delusions. So we're addressing white privilege, but there's another kind of privilege that often doesn't get addressed in Buddhist communities or in communities in general. It's the American imperialism privilege. So we see isolated cases where individuals and people of color are being targeted and killed by militarized police. And we're outraged by it. It's in the media. And yet, Buddhist communities, educational institutions, practitioners are avoiding recognizing the suffering that millions of people of color are being targeted and killed by our military in overseas endless global war of terror. And this is not being discussed in Buddhist communities, very little. So as practitioners of Buddhism, to do no harm, to not contribute to the suffering is some of our tenets, our foundational tenets. And yet our taxes are paying for this violence, horrific violence and suffering, which we avoid, we turn away from. So my thought and my practice and reflection and engaged Buddhist action, compassion in action, is how as Buddhist communities from all lineages, as Buddhist practitioners, as Dharma teachers, as concerned citizens, do we address the suffering that we as a country are causing to millions of beings due to our ongoing endless wars.
Thank you. And instantly, one of the things that comes to mind is how this is part of what we begin with, is by putting the questions out there, by putting the data out there, you know, and saying, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to start thinking about this? You know, there are people being killed. There are people, our money goes into these acts in the war and imperialism, and we're all a part of that. You know, how do we start talking about that? How do you keep bringing the question up when no one wants to even think about it? How do you become a pain in people's ass in the Sangha? You know, how do you keep bringing that over and over again? And how do we start talking to people who are ready to talk and start building out from there? You know? And at the same time, as we begin this conversation, we're also saying, you know what, there's also interdependence. You know, that we may think that we're causing no harm, but we're all a part of the violence. We're all contributing. Let's talk about that. Let's practice with that. And then let's get active. You know? A lot of, my friends in Black Lives Matter and like all these big national movements, they're just like, Buddhists, whatever. You know, you go to the march, you go to the protest, no one, we don't show up. You know, and then people come to me and they're like, oh, how are you a Buddhist? Because Buddhists are really apathetic. What kind of Buddhist are you? You know, it's hard for me to respond to that. You know, I say I am practicing, but this is what I understand Dharma to be, is that we take our practice into the conflict. You know, and I think that one of the things that we actually have to start doing is creating and establishing communities where this is actually the center of the work, is justice. You know? I'm just not interested anymore in trying to get people to talk, but I'm interested in pulling those who are ready to do the work into community. You know, because you'll sacrifice yourself. You know, but for those of us who have the energy, those of us who are positioned in communities and sanghas with authority, like, this is our ethical responsibility. You know, if you're not doing this work, then you are committing ethical misconduct. You know, it's not about just being comfortable and good and being nice. It's actually about disrupting systems of violence. Yeah. So if you're not interested in that, then it's fine. I say it's fine. You know, but I'm going to be doing this over here with the Reverend Angel and all the people in our communities who are doing this work day in and day out, trying to disrupt violence, trying to get active, you know, trying to ask these really hard questions. You know, maybe if we start leading, others will start following. You know. So, thank you, but continue to do this work. Keep going.
Thank you. When I was up at Standing Rock, we saw how brilliant tens of thousands of people coming together in solidarity and unity. Over 400 interfaith clergy came up there on 2 occasions.
Reverend Angel was there.
In October and then in December. So we saw what is possible. So I think if we can organize and mobilize as spiritual interfaith communities to continue that vision and that movement. That started from civil rights and on and on and on. And what we're facing, as you mentioned, is literally a genocide. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran is next. So these are planned wars. And if we don't do anything, like you mentioned, it's our ethical responsibility as practitioners, because our tax dollars are paying for it right out of our pocket.
And our silence.
And our sons and daughters, we send them off under false pretenses of democracy.
And again, as Audre Lorde says, our silence will not protect us. You know, but we think it does. You know, but our silence is actually, in this context, violence. You know, there's so many genocides happening. There's the genocide of Black trans women. You know, which every day is the death, you know, but like that's nowhere in the conversations in our communities.
Indigenous women and children. Many of them are related to these oil camps the men camps around these oil pipelines. So thank you for your good work, and you reminded me of Martin Luther King. There comes a time when silence is betrayal.
Yes.
And I see this too rampantly in our country. There's deafening silence, and we're betraying the future generations by our inaction and by turning away from the suffering.
Thank you. And there's this question of karma as well, and the question, and this whole thing of, well, there are certain people who aren't present in our communities because they don't have the karma to be there. And this is coming directly from Tibetan teachers, so I don't just make this up. People report back to me. And it's also an act of negative karma when we enjoy benefits that restrict others from being in spaces. So, for instance, just really limiting it to this one identity location, being born white and privileged is not good karma. Because there's violence that comes with that for me. So you celebrate it, I'm trying to confront it. You turn that into merit when you say, oh, this is how I've been born, this is what I'm doing, and this is how this is impacting other people. Then you're like, oh, I'm transforming this through compassion, And those are the people that I want to build community with, who get that like their enjoyment of their privilege is actually creating a problem for me being in this space to begin with,
It's really refreshing to hear a Dharma teacher talk about ableism. I feel like it's very rarely mentioned in these spaces. And so, as someone who occupies, I'm in this healthy body. I'm able to do things. And I'm just wondering if you can name ways in which able-bodied Dharma practitioners perpetuate ableism. And I'm also really curious about this piece of fatness in spirituality.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier today in another group. Yeah. So one of the ways, we talk about this binary between able and disabled. The language is always very different, and we're not quite clear about the languaging yet, but as someone with a particular body, you're entering into spaces and saying, oh, this is really easy for me. Who is this not easy for? Who's not able to hear? Who's not able to come into a space? Who's not able to walk in? Who's not able to sit down? Who's not able to, sit, to occupy this way of being a Dharma practitioner that we expect people to do and how is that an act of violence? So you look around, and you ask yourself, how can I make this accessible? So we have signing, we have language of sign language, and that's important, but what else, So always just having that question, who's not here and why not? And the more comfortable you are, the chances are you're in a violent space for someone. I just have this really great fortune of people just disrupting me in Dharma talks and saying, I can't hear. I'm not comfortable. I'm like, oh, great. Let's just stop and make sure you're comfortable. Who's not able to get in? Let's get out and let's find spaces where everyone can come into and have that accessibility to. So it's always centering our dominant kind of identities, and we just decenter it. Not everyone's like me. As for the Dharma teachers in this space too, and mindfulness teachers as well, it's like everyone isn't like me, so how do I teach and give instructions that decenter the places I feel comfortable? And in terms of fatness, this is something I've been thinking about quite a bit as someone who identifies as fat. It's like, okay, how am I considered less than? Right? We're talking about yoga, and body and yoga. It's like, oh, well, fat people don't do yoga. because those aren't the people who sell videos and charge like thousands of dollars for a weekend. You know, how do you actually confront that and say, no, it's like all bodies matter, you know, including my body, you know, and how you're just simply judged. You know, I think fat people are scapegoats, you know, and you get projected on this narrative of just being unhealthy and lazy, you know, and there's no consideration to understand that this body is complex, you know, and that we all, our right is to be happy in the body that we choose. You know, and then of course we have all different bodies that maybe, you know, they're not of our choosing, but it's also to be happy in the bodies that we have, you know. Yeah.
Do you think there are limits in, like, I as an individual, like there are limits to how I can accommodate somebody who's different to me? Because I realize that it's, you can't save everyone, like you can't help everyone. And I'm wondering, like, what do we do when confronting this?
Yeah.
The least violent way.
I think that, so the part of the question about saving everyone, I think that's more, you know, has a lot more energy for me. You know, I think that in terms of like saving people, we have to be very careful about how we get involved in projects of saving people, you know, because it becomes about us. You know, so I think that when we decenter ego and the sense of self, I think our capacity to be of help increases quite a bit. You know, and you begin to realize, oh, like I'm not actually doing enough to begin with. You know, so how do we push ourselves to the edge and say, okay, is this enough? You know, how do you collect data from that? You know? So accommodating is very hard. It's a very difficult language. Because it's very judgmental, in a way. It's very blaming. I'm gonna practice pity and accommodate you, you know, because I'm gonna be uncomfortable and allow you to do something, you know. Instead of like, how can I just meet you where you are instead of you expecting you to meet me where I am, you know, and not seeing you as a nuisance, but seeing you as someone who needs things just as I need things. You know, but my needs are about trying to have access to things that your lack of attention restricts me from getting into. Yeah. And just being smart about it, knowing what your limits and edges are, and taking care of yourself, but knowing that like there's a positionality of power here, and that you have much more of an ethical responsibility. You know.
Thank you, Lama.
Absolutely, thank you. We'll take one more question. I'm a little lengthy with the answers, and I know everyone wants their sign. Yes.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to name the pain that I just experienced in terms of there was just a person who'd been waiting and then sat down again.
Oh.
Just that wasn't seen, and it just pained me, and
Yeah.
I just wanted to name it.
Yeah.
In terms of who even goes to the mic and gets to speak.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I'm not
Oh,
saying
okay.
it's like I need to say it.
Okay.
It just kind of, yeah, it just pains me.
Yeah.
And as we're talking about that and how we make it accessible and
Yeah.
everything.
Okay. Who was standing up at the mic and who sat down? If people, whoever left, please come back or just speak from where you're sitting. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Oh yeah, okay.
I had a question. You said something that I've never heard before, and I really want to hear more.
Yeah.
Critical race theory.
What's that?
I teach critical
Race theory, critical race theory. Okay, yeah.
So that's what I do, and I'm a practitioner as well. And I heard you personalize causes and conditions, which I often feel in Buddhism, folks use causes and condition to excuse normativity. Like this has happened because of causes and conditions, which we know to mean over lifetimes as well.
Right.
But also, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the way that causes and conditions have agent.
It's interesting. It's also an impermanence. So when I say causes and conditions, I mean that there's something that's arising in the moment, but I can change it. There's not like this kind of fixed thing, this kind of static situation. It's like, oh, this is happening, but what is it actually saying? What is it actually revealing to us in the moment? As we say causes and conditions, we're like, yeah, so I have the causes and conditions to be in certain positions, but that's also really impermanent. It's also depending on other things, and so we want to actually bring awareness to how nothing's fixed. So karma doesn't mean anything's fixed, and that even karma can be disrupted and changed. Even in this tradition, it can be purified. It can be, a host of things, But I don't want to convey that like, oh, this is normal, but that normalcy is also quite impermanent. And it has nothing to do with ethics. It's not this ethical thing. It's just like, oh, this is what's being considered and valued as being normal, and then we can disrupt that when it actually doesn't work for us to be in the spaces to experience freedom and happiness. Yeah, everything is an illusion, but you just can't you can't say that and just stay there. You have to earn the right to say that. So don't. Don't use that as a way to get out of the conflict and the contradictions and your own discomfort. Well, I don't see race. Everything is empty. Good for you, but like I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about how we're interacting, because what you're doing, you're not acting like this is empty. You're acting like I am a person that you should be dominating. If I didn't exist, you wouldn't be confused about dominating me. You're right? It's like Jedi mind tricks. Like, this is like, just watch Star Wars and look what Yoda was doing. You say this, but I'm going to give you something else. Don't let people slip into the ultimate. It's boring. It's been done. This is Shambhala, so you've written the books about it. So let it be, and let's come back to the relative and work through these relationships. Is there someone else who really needed to speak into this space? Is someone, yeah.
I already got myself up here. Oh, lead with my heart. You talked earlier about, when giving advice, you talked about strategies, and then you also talked about your frustration with teachers. And I found it interesting when approaching that, because I have difficulty. I feel like I need to go through my life, and I have my strategies, and I have my tactics that portray me as something so where people can hear me, because sometimes people don't hear me unless I portray myself a certain way. And what's difficult with that when I'm with someone who's teaching me, and the frustration of how do I portray this and how do I confront this without being or having them take it as disrespectful, or because I've reached a point where I don't want to be in a complacency, and I don't want to be silent. I want to speak when things upset me and when they upset my body and the way I feel physically. But I haven't quite found a strategy for that. And
you're just going to have to let people think you're disrespecting them, because you are, right? You can't respect when someone's uttering this violence. You're like, I'm not going to respect that. I may love you, I may see your basic goodness, wherever this propaganda is, but but what I'm interested in is this narrative that's triggering me, and that's what I want to talk about. So that's how you have this interaction. You're like, I just want to share my experience of what's happening for me. You said this, and this is what I'm feeling. Let me start with my body. This is how I feel in my body, and can we have a dialogue about that? You know, did you mean what you said? Did I hear you correctly? You know, can I give you a chance to like take that back and practice wisdom? You know?
Yeah.
Like there's a way in which you don't, it's not about doing all this labor, but you're doing the labor for yourself. You're like, how can I support myself in articulating this? You know? And if you're working with someone in a position of power, like just say it's like a teacher or something like that, there's a way in which you can be like, listen, you know, this is what I heard, this is what I'm feeling. I wonder, have you considered this stuff, this other thing, this text, whatever, this different view, you know, because that's what I'm working with. And I want to see how your narrative lines up with this and how we can actually understand what nonviolence is. You know, but a lot of teachers aren't interested in that. You know, if we're talking about teachers, you know, a lot of teachers are interested in being right. You know, and that's a complication for all of us. You know, people come to me all the time. They're like, "You're not right." You know, I don't take it so personally. Sometimes I take it personally, but I try to see that maybe I am wrong. And if I'm really actually committed to trying to like free people, then I have to be serious about getting feedback from people and disruptions and all of that. You know, if you're not in a relationship with a teacher like that, then I think you just need to practice safety and have boundaries. You know.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. It's like, there's one more. It will take one more. Your hand has been up. So come up to the mic. Journey to the mic. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Lama.
Yeah.
You created some disruption, so I would like to ask you something.
Yes.
When I was sitting and listening to you and everybody, I totally forgot that I'm a colored person. Living in Europe for 30 years, of course, I'm native of Nepal.
Yep.
But intimately understanding the shared suffering and shared joy with my colleague and friend, I also totally forgot that I'm a colored person. I'm non-Norwegian, for example.
Right.
But when you reminded me here in this hall, my humble question here is that, could you tell, in view of race science, what is the right view according to Buddhism? Or
so the right view in relationship to racism, race relations?
Race or race science, I'm not talking racism.
Like race?
Race, I mean, I'm a different color, he's a white. What is the right view
here? The right view
here?
In terms of how we appear, in
Sure.
terms of, being, raised. Yeah. I think the right view is to recognize your assumptions about people and what you see. It's okay for people to look at me and say, "Oh, you're black." That's not offensive. You know, what's offensive is when you make an assumption about what color means. You know, so that's right view. Right view is actually bringing awareness into these connections that we're making in our minds that actually take us out of a pure view. It takes us into views that peg people into being certain ways, and then you fix them into being certain ways, and you can't see them differently. You know, so it's okay to see difference. You know, I'm not trying to, it's fine. It's okay to see difference. What we're trying to challenge in the right view is the assumptions that we're making about what we're seeing because our eyes are always lying. Our senses, this is like Mahamudra, our senses are lying to us. You know, we think we see, hear, taste something is actually just a fabrication of what's beneath that. You know, and that's what I'm trying to do. But I have to recognize the relative differences in everything that I'm doing. You know, and that's how I begin to free myself from bias and assumptions and prejudice, you know, misogyny and everything. That's right view, acknowledging it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I meant to have finished beforehand, but like apparently you don't have anything to do tonight because you're here. So again, I just want to thank everyone for showing up to what I consider to be a really fun conversation. And I love it. And it feels like shit. But I'm telling you, this is what liberation feels like. You know? Yay! Yeah. Yeah. So as we end tonight, give Reverend Angel and I some time to make our way back to the table. If you would like to buy a book, please, we'll sign it. But we won't have conversations because we're tired and want to go home. And so as we kind of finish up tonight, I just want to do just a dedication of merit. I just want to dedicate whatever merit, whatever virtue that we've accumulated today in our gathering, in our conversations, in our hearts and minds. I want to dedicate that to the liberation of all beings. I dedicate this to all our neighbors, friends, acquaintances, our enemies, all the people in our lives who really need to be having this conversation, who really need to be in these spaces. I pray that they may one day have the experience of being in transformative conversation and dialogue, and that this leads to this utter and intense disruption of all systems of violence. Swaha, yeah, Buddhist, yeah. Imaho. So we're going to do a bow. I'm going to strike the bell. It didn't sound exactly what I thought it was going to. No, on top. Oh.